everyone, it's another live this week. We seem to be packing them in recently. These lives started with me just asking my friends if they wanted to pop on a live with me and talk about home ed. And now we've got experts on, we've got people from across the globe, so it is really exciting that we get to talk to lots of different people. And if you would like to come on and talk to us, then just definitely get in touch, send us a message via Instagram and we'll work out a time, because we would love to talk to as many home educators as possible. But I'm about to invite Ronni on from Multicultural Motherhood, so we're going to chat to her tonight. I know she's got a podcast as well later on, so we're going to try and make sure we stick to the time limit, but I'll invite her on now and then we'll get started. I think we both sent invitations to each other at the same time to be on. Let's try this again. This is always the awkward bit, because you don't know how long it's going to take, so you could start rambling to try and fill in the time, but then someone could pop on straight away. Let's see. I think Ronnie's at her end trying to get on, and I'm trying to invite her on, and I don't know if we've somehow messed it up by doing it at the same time. Hang on. Fingers crossed this will work. Yes.
Hello.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. It was really weird. It just kind of went off the live video, so then I had to go back into it.
Yeah.
But I'm here now. Hooray!
How are you?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. Enjoying the nice weather.
So nice.
Isn't it great when you're home ed, when the weather's nice?
So good. I remember, I just keep thinking back to when I was in the classroom and just how hot it would be and all the windows, and yeah, it is so nice just to be outside with them. Have you been celebrating Eid this weekend as well?
Yeah, we have actually, but we were actually ill, so we didn't get to go out.
Oh no. So
Yeah.
Do you get to do a do-over or anything? Like, do you get to redo some of the events, or does it not work out?
Yeah, I think we'll just probably celebrate next weekend instead now.
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, I'm going to start the 10 minutes soon, because I know you've got a busy evening. But before we start the timer, could you just, I know a lot of people don't know who you are, but could you just introduce yourself, who you home educate, and what kind of you do as well as your home education?
Yeah, so I'm Ronni, and I'm a blogger and Instagrammer, and I'm also a speech and language therapist. And I work part-time as a speech and language therapist while home educating my children. I've got 4 children, and they're aged 4, 7, 10, and 12. And my eldest one, who is 12, she recently started school. She started into year 7, though I don't know whether she'll continue for another year. But it was one of those things where she had no friends because it was COVID and no one could meet up, and she was very sociable and wanted to be around lots of other children. So she's been in school for this whole year, but I'm still home educating the other 3 and contemplating whether to take the eldest one back out again as well.
Yeah, I've heard that because mine is still quite young, but I know for a lot of like the pre-teen and teenage years that COVID was really hard because they just couldn't make those connections. They're already a bit hard to have in the home ed community as well, I think, anyway. So yeah, I think there's a lot of people that age trying to figure stuff out. That's a big age spread as well, 4 to 12.
Yeah. All the primary years and just getting into secondary as well.
You're definitely going to be an expert talking today about reading and so on. So I'm going to start the timer now. And if we go over, it's fine, but it just keeps us on track a little bit. So you are a bit of an expert with all things language and in different languages as well. But reading is obviously a big deal for a lot of home ed families. And I think because it's a big deal, it becomes this concern and this worry. And then like I pop onto your Instagram and everything is so calming every time you talk about reading and so on. Like it's just like this wave of calm over me. So I wondered if you could like give some of that calm to the people watching as well and talk about your home ed journey with reading. And was it as calm as it looks? Did you ever worry about it? Just kind of generally just hit us with all the advice.
I think as my background's a speech and language therapist, so I obviously am an expert in language, and that also makes me a bit of an expert in reading as well, because, you know, language is that pre-literacy skill that all children need to acquire before they are able to read. And because I've done so much research into reading as well, I know that, you know, there's no rush. And whether children start to read at the age of 5 or 7, actually by the age of 11, they're all at the same level anyway. So it doesn't really matter if your child is reading early or if your child is reading a bit later, because at the end of the day, that everyone is going to be at the same level by the time they reach secondary school age. And I think that's really important for people to remember, actually, because children start school so young in the UK, actually, much earlier than in most other countries around the world. So you go to other countries and children are not starting to read until they're 6 or 7 years old. So I think we need to remember that as well, you know, that children don't need to be learning phonics at 4. They can leave it much, much later. And I think if you look at it from that perspective, then you're just going to be a lot more relaxed about it all. There's really no rush because, you know, we've actually got our whole lives to learn. So if it doesn't come straight away, you know, it doesn't really matter because we can just do it when the child is ready. And that's the beauty of home education, isn't it? We can just follow our child's lead and do everything at the right pace for our child.
Yeah, so with because you've got kind of the 4 age ranges, did they all start to read at a similar time, or was it very varied?
Yeah, so they all kind of learnt the alphabet, you know, around the age of 4 or 5. But I kind of really held off with more formal instruction for reading. So it wasn't until they're like maybe towards the age of 6 that I really start with, you know, let's try and learn to read now. So I really like the Ladybird keyword books that teach children, you know, the top most, you know, the 100 most used words. And I think, you know, my elder 2 just were able to read from going through that series of books. So there's 12 levels in the series, and they didn't even finish the whole lot of 12 actually, because once they got to, you know, about 2/3, 3/4 of the way through, they were just reading by themselves. And I think it, you know, we just do it really slowly. I don't ever think, oh, you know, let's try and read in 6 months, you know. I'm really relaxed about it. I wait until they kind of come up to me, or I suggest, you know, a couple of times a week, let's sit down and read a page of the book. And yeah, they just learn that way. I really dislike actually the Oxford Reading Tree books. I just think the stories are a bit weird.
Chip and Kippen.
Yeah, I mean, even the names, I'm just like, why did they choose such strange names? So yeah, we prefer the Ladybird books, which is actually what I used to read myself actually when I was at school.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure why they moved away from those books really when they were working so well for a lot of children. So yeah, I just think go with at your child's pace. My children now, I think my eldest is a bit of a reluctant reader actually, because she did actually go to school for a year. So when she was in year 1, so she was home educated for reception, she went to school year 1. So then she was kind of forced to do all the phonics that they do in school. And that really put her off reading. And still she's a bit of a reluctant reader actually. But with my boys, who are 7 and 10, they're much more into reading. They enjoy it a lot more. And I think it just goes to show that when you don't push children, when you don't force them to do what everyone else is doing and let them do something that works for them, they just enjoy it a lot more, don't they?
Yeah. I look back to my first kid, and when he was 3, bless him, I was making him do these phonics games, and he like enjoyed it. But I look back and I just think, what was I doing? He's 3 or 4 years old, and I'm making him do this and that and all the jolly phonics things. And that made him like a perfectionist, I think, because he knew there was like a right way to do something. So he never did the like pretending to read like my other kids do. And he never just kind of pretended to write because he knew, oh, well, there's a right way of doing this. So I've definitely seen holding back with my others that there's a lot more enjoyment, I think, in them. But it is exciting when they start to read. I think sometimes I find like I want them to be readers so much that I have to like hold myself back a little bit, because it's such an exciting world that it opens up for them. I think that it can be hard to be calm about it. And that's what I like about what you're saying, that it's just like that whole idea of being child-led and that we're not in a competition or a race is really helpful. What do you have advice for reluctant readers or reluctant writers? Do you have any tips? Is it that we just stand back and like let them develop, or do we push a little bit? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the most important thing really is to let them choose what they read. Because my 10-year-old at the moment, he's just absolutely obsessed with Beano. So it's almost the only thing he read for a long, long time. He just sat and read Beano. And I was thinking, oh, I really would like him to read a chapter book, read a proper book, not a comic. But actually, by allowing him to just read Beano all of the time, it made him love reading so, so much. And now he is starting to get into chapter books. So I think, don't worry about what your child reads. The most important thing is whether they're reading or not reading, So if they are enjoying reading a comic, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I think there's even research that shows that children learn like a wider variety of vocabulary actually from comics, which can sound strange really, because you think, oh, how can there be such a broad vocabulary in a comic book? But you do quite often find that because they're having to put their point across in such a short phrase, they do actually really have to be careful about the kinds of words that they choose. So it's really interesting actually when you look into it. There's nothing wrong with reading a comic. If your child wants to read a comic, let them read a comic.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I don't know if I'm allowed to share this, but behind the scenes on the Twinkl Home Ed team, we're working on a comic about a home educating kid. That's going to be. I'm really excited because my oldest is the same, that he loves kind of graphic novels, and that's been his gateway into reading. I've seen a lot of people in the comments saying about writing and what you do about reluctant writers. I think it might be a similar type of answer, but have you got any thoughts on that might help people?
Well, we follow the Charlotte Mason philosophy at home, and I found that her tips and the way that she has done it has been really, really helpful actually with writing, because we started off just with copy work. So if you're not familiar with that, it's just getting them to write for 5 minutes every day, but getting them to do their best kind of writing. So you don't say you have to write 2 sentences or you have to write a paragraph. If they're only able to write 1 letter in 5 minutes, but they've done it really carefully and neatly and thought about it, if that's all that they're able to do, just 1 letter, that's fine. So we quite often get with the youngest ones, they maybe do a couple of words a day or, 1 sentence a day. And slowly you will just see that their handwriting gets really nice. And even with my boys, and I do kind of think, oh, sometimes people think boys have like really messy writing, especially at the beginning. But if you get them to do copy work, it makes them focus on it and it makes them take care. And what I like to do with the copy work really is to get them to choose what they write. And we quite like to do poems. So we have that big National Trust book, I'm the Seed That Grew the Tree. That's a really popular one. We love that one. So quite often we'll go to the poem of the day, of the date that it is. And if that's too long, because they like to do shorter ones, when they're littler, they just choose a short one that maybe like a couple of days before, a couple of days later. And we might do that over the week, So just, 5 minutes every day. And they will slowly work through a poem. And what they love to do as well is when they finish the poem, they get to annotate it and draw a picture about the poem. If it's about a tree, they draw a tree. If it's about a squirrel, they draw a squirrel. Or, they draw a nice little picture. And now they've got this really lovely book that, you can see their progress over the year. But it also looks really beautiful because they've drawn pictures and decorated it. It looks beautiful. So that is something that I would say is really helpful with writing. But also, I think it's important not to make them write too much, because we can sometimes think, oh, everything that we read, they've got to write something about it. But it's not the case at all, actually. We just need to have a lot of good discussions about what we've read. And it's really through, talking about it, narrating it, that the information gets into their heads. But with the younger ones, you definitely don't need to be worried about writing. And actually, my 10-year-old was quite a reluctant writer until recently. And he's just started to do quite a bit more writing of his own accord, So he will, just read something, or I'll read something to him and he'll go, oh, that was interesting. I'll go and create a journal entry about that, So like, yesterday, for example, we were looking through the Science and Nature magazine. I've got a subscription for that at the moment. And we read about time travel. And he just, he just loved that so much. And then we watched a documentary about Stephen Hawking, and then we watched some videos about is time travel possible and what would need to happen for time travel to happen and things like that.
Yeah.
And he loved it. He just went and he just wrote like an A4 page about time travel. Now, I hadn't said to him, you need to do this. In fact, we're actually on our summer holiday at the moment, so we're not really doing any formal work at all. But he just loved it so much that he wanted to do it. And I think that's the aim for all of education, really. That's the aim when we're home educators, it's to make children love learning.
Yeah, that's so encouraging, because for those of us like me who have kids, my oldest has just turned 8, and hearing someone who has had kids like go through that reluctant writer and like, because you've got the whole spectrum, to know that actually that kind of slow and steady, and we do copy work as well, and sometimes I think like, is it going to work, because I've been trained in such a very different method. So it's really encouraging to hear that. Thank you so much, and so practical as well. Our time is actually up, but thank you so much for joining us. That was really helpful. Where can people find you? And I know you run some courses as well. Do you want to tell us quickly about that?
Yeah, so I run a couple of courses for parents. One of them is called Raising Talkers, and that's for parents of 0 to 5-year-olds with a language delay. And it just tells people how to boost their children's language skills, how to do speech and language therapy at home. But it's a preventative thing. So if you've got a young baby and you want to know how to prevent a language delay, then it's really good to teach you the way to communicate with your baby to make sure they've got really good language skills. The other one is emergent literacy, and that's all about what we've been talking about, really, how to raise children, what are the skills that children need to acquire before they're able to learn to read and write, and how to prepare them and start them on that journey.
Brilliant. So if you head over to Ronnie's page, you'll be able to, and she will see all the links.
Yeah, look at my blog as well, because I've got lots of information about how to teach your child to read. I've reviewed some reading schemes, so there's lots of information on my blog multiculturalmotherhood.com.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm going to let you go because I know
Thank
you've
you
got
so much.
Thank you for joining us. It was brilliant. I'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.